Hey there, it's me Eden. Welcome to Crossdressing Adventure Stories. Today I'm going to share with you cross-dressing adventure stories called Classmate Turned Me into a Sissy, Part 6. So, if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing and be a part of our inclusive community. After a pause, Mrs. O'Connor said, "Oh yes, fine, I was just calling to let you know that I had invited Blake to stay here for dinner tonight, and that I would drive him home at about 8 o'clock. Is that okay?" All the girls, excitedly, gave out a silent cheer. "Oh, sure it is. How kind of you. Let me speak to Blake for a moment." Blake had not fully absorbed the change in Mrs. O'Connor's statements, but he sensed that he did not have to be afraid of her telling his mom that he was wearing a dress. At least not then. He got on the phone, where his mom told him to thank Mrs. O'Connor after the dinner and to be polite and so forth. If she did detect a little hoarseness in his voice from the crying, she did not let on. After he hung up, he thanked Mrs. O'Connor profusely. She said, "My dear boy, is it boy? What am I going to do about you?" She shook her head back and forth thinking, and then said, "Come here, Blake, and let me hold you. I'm sorry I got so upset, it was just such a shock. I wasn't suspecting such a thing." Blake got up and sat down on Mrs. O'Connor's lap, and she held him closely to her. He could feel her very large, firm breasts against his chest. The layers of his dress and crinolines was like a big cloud of pink and white over the blue jeans and white pullover top Mrs. O'Connor was wearing. "So tell me everything now. You start, Karen, since you are the president of the club." Karen then told Mrs. O'Connor about the conditions under which they had all agreed that Blake would be made a full member of the club. She sighed often hearing this, and shook her head, but finally saw that she really didn't have the right to stop them from what they voluntarily wanted to do. After hearing all the girls, she said to Blake, "I want to ask you a few questions to see if I can understand that this is really good for you, and not a big mistake that you might be making because you are lonely or something." "Sure, Mrs. O'Connor, I'll be happy to answer any questions." "Good. Now Blake, tell me what you are feeling now being in that dress." "I guess I feel very pretty." "Yes, I suppose you should. It is a very pretty dress." "Now dear, you might find this silly, but I wonder how good you are at arm wrestling?" "What? Why are you asking that?" "Because boys just love to do it, don't they? It's a really male thing." "Yes, I guess so. Let's see how easily you can beat Amy. She's the strongest girl here, right? You can surely beat her easily." "I suppose so. Give it a try." Blake and Amy then sat across from each other at the dining room table and proceeded to arm wrestle. Though Blake tried as hard as he might, Amy beat him almost immediately in 2 bouts. Mrs. O'Connor then asked Penny and Janet to try wrestling him, and Penny beat him after a bit of a struggle. And finally Blake and Janet tied each other. "So you and Janet are about equally strong. I guess your arms really are kind of girlish," she said thoughtfully. After a moment she then said, "Now answer this question. Amy is clearly much stronger than you. If you could have just one characteristic of hers for yourself, what would you choose?" Blake said, "I guess I wish that I had breasts like hers so that I would have to wear more of a grown-up bra than the one I have on. It would give me a nicer shape, I guess." "Is that what you were asking?" "Oh, Blake, I thought you would have liked to be at least as strong as her." "I guess you're right. I don't know why I didn't think of that." For some reason I was just thinking how lucky she was for being able to wear bras every day. To know that she would be able to eventually nurse a baby, and take care of it and hold it and so forth. It seemed like something I really wanted to do. I wish I could have a nice figure like Amy's or any of the other girls in the club. Blake started to blush when he realized that the girls had all taken on sympathetic expressions, now including Mrs. O'Connor too. After hearing and seeing all this, I think you probably are best treated like a girl, Blake. Mrs. O'Connor said. You have a gentle, loving nature, which is quite feminine, and I suppose you need an outlet for it. I guess I'll be happy to go along with you being one of the girls in the club. So from now on I'll also call you Pamela and try to have something like a mother-daughter relationship with you. All the girls, including Pamela, then thanked Mrs. O'Connor for her support, and she then invited all the club members to stay for dinner. She even told the girls to take Blake upstairs and put some pantyhose on him, and some makeup so that he would be well dressed for dinner. They were starting to do this when Kathy asked her mom, "What was the phone call you were talking about when you came into my room?" "Oh, I completely forgot." "Yes, Brad's mother called to say that his cousin broke her leg and will not be able to come to the wedding." "What a shame, even after you bought her the dress and everything," Kathy said. "Yes, and the procession will not be symmetric now, with 3 bridesmaids on each side of the aisle." All of a sudden everyone turned and looked at Blake, sitting quietly in the bridesmaid dress. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Mrs. O'Connor said. A chorus of girls said, "Yes, Pamela will be our 6th bridesmaid." That's all for today. See you in the next video. Till then, take care. Oh yes, please like and subscribe to my channel. And also share your feedback, it really means a lot to me.